For having me here today. So my name is Mukesh Kumar, as it's written there. I'm university lecturer in Institute for Manufacturing and Department of Engineering, particularly looking at operations management and industrial systems. So I'm going to talk about today about food waste. So very right quiz that you had just now. Kimchi appeared to be the highest wasted food item in Korea. However, if we look at global level, kimchi is representing almost the vegetable area that people generally waste. So around 45% we estimate that there is a food waste in terms of um, fresh fruit and vegetables globally. Um, Globally, if we really look at, the chicken could be in terms of value is the highest wasted item, not in terms of volume. So kimchi is considered to be volume-based highest item that we waste. So just to give you a little bit picture, what actually this food waste means. Globally, on economic terms, we waste around $1 trillion food every year. What does it mean? It means today, if I have that money, I can establish 5 Samsung companies, right? So I can be owner of 5 Samsung companies if we stop wasting that particular food. But that's just economic cost. If we actually include social cost and environmental cost, it goes up to $2.6 trillion. So you can imagine how much money that we are wasting every year. Some of these waste could be, we can't avoid it, it will be there, and I can give you some of those examples. So here we are going to present you a particular diagram or chart that you are looking at. Basically, it divides certain countries into certain geographical area, and it talks about where the waste is. So here is one of the third bar that you look at. It's called industrialized Asia. It has only 3 countries, China, Korea, and Japan. And the red color that you see talks about how much consumer is wasting food in those countries. That's perfectly fine. Before I was coming here and I was approached to talk about food waste, I read few articles and I thought, I don't think so I should be talking in Korea about food waste because you're so good in food waste management. RFID system, good waste collection, almost halving the urban food waste. But if you look at below different color chart, which is a blue color, is the food waste which happens before it reaches to consumer. It's a big area that we are looking at, and we don't have any clue where these waste exist, what happened to this particular waste. So today I'm going to tell you a story about that particular waste using potatoes. And this potato is very humble vegetable. We take it for granted, especially in Western world where it's consumed more. It is the third highest wasted vegetable in Western part of the world after rice and wheat, and also third highest produced as well. Um, so when we look at potato, what is potato? Right, it's a tuber. It grows under the soil. It's almost discovered in Europe, introduced in European countries in early 1600. Before that, in European country, nobody was eating potatoes. So it's a very new phenomenon that we are eating. And this particular potato comes from South Africa. In Korea, Korea produces 3 types of potatoes. And if I ask you how many types of potatoes there, means varieties of potatoes, there are more than 4,500 varieties of potato exist in the world, right? But Korean potatoes can't be useful for making French fries and other kind of things. That's why Korea still imports imports potato from Australia, China, and US, and these imports are growing up, right? When I'm still on export, so why not I should tell you how much Korea spend on importing these food from outside. So around more than 25 billion US dollar Korea spend on these particular food to import. Not just potato, including seafood as well. So if somebody is wasting a food in Korea, almost you're wasting your foreign currency as well that we need to take into account. So I was talking about potatoes. Potato has a life cycle. It's a short life cycle, but it can be extended. We can extend potato life to 9 months. So it's a huge opportunity is there. High product differentiation, I've talked about how many varieties there. Quality and quantity depends upon types of farm, where these farms are, climatic condition. You have legislation, regulation which govern potatoes, but also it increases waste. And these are the things that we look at. When you're looking at potato waste and potato supply chain, you have producer, you have wholesaler, you have retailer, and you have consumer. Which consumers are we that we consume? When we look at this particular supply chain of potato, this diagram is not very clearly appearing in this particular slides. What do you see? They are not just 4 companies or 4 entities who are coming together and producing this potato and then distributing it. There are almost 27 organizations involved in just to produce this potato and bring it to you in different form and different sizes, right? Either a fresh potato or processed potatoes. And that involves even the seed growers. So remember, if I want to have a new variety of potatoes, it means the seed that I need to develop, it might take 15 years to develop it. So it's very complicated task and complex structure that a potato goes through to reach you on your plate. Right? So we are talking about potato ecosystem. This is the UK data that you see on the slide. It means what it says that a hectare of land can produce 100 tons of potato, but it only produces 55 tons. It means farmers are putting all the resources in terms of pesticides, seeds, fertilizers to grow 100 tons of potato, but it only gets 55 tons. There is a loss there. So we are almost losing almost half of the potato at the farm level. Then you are looking at some of the potatoes grower who are not that big enough to employ latest technology. For example, in UK, you have potato growers who grows only 55 or 35 tons. 55 tons means 1 hectare land that one particular farmer has. So small growers. Our studies also finds out that UK almost wastes 2/3 of its potato completely. It's a huge amount of potato that we waste after putting so much resources into it. I have gone to the potato ecosystem, but I think I'm using waste and loss together. And it's very important to make a distinction. What is waste and what is loss? Waste, when we talk about, is potato and byproduct that do not fit into human consumption. It's about when you actually peel it off potatoes, right? Remember, if you have a thin-skinned potato and thick-skinned potato, you are wasting more potato when you have a thick skin, right? Why not eat thin-skinned potatoes? That will solve a little bit problem. When we are looking at losses, potato and byproduct that cannot be used for human consumption or processed product, is losses through growing, which I told you, and losses through processing. In this particular talk, I'm combining both things together, right? So this is a real world analysis. This is exactly, you see, if there is 100 kilogram of potato are grown at the farmer's level, actually wholesaler only gets 76 kilograms. So you have loss from the farm to reaching to the wholesaler. From 76 gram from wholesaler, the retailer only gets 63 kilograms of potatoes. From retailer to consumer, almost it's loss of 1 kilogram, means consumer gets 62 kilograms. But if you look at what consumer does, it throws 47 kilograms to the dustbin. It's a huge loss at the consumer end. So in food supply chain, it's quite interesting that we see the waste that we actually can see it. But there are other waste that exist in supply chain, in upstream supply chain. We are not seeing it, and we don't care about it. So again, when I took the Korea example of consumer waste, it makes a very good practice of using waste management and upscaling it to the food, pig food. It's quite interesting. Also, almost penalizing customer that if they are wasting more, they have to pay more. It works quite at this end. But what happens in upstream, we really don't know, right? And that's the problem in UK as well. One of the things that we don't know what exactly happening in wastage in whole supply chain. So this is about upcycling. I think what happens if potatoes are, we are quite fussy customers, we don't like ugly vegetables, potato is not in right shapes, we'll throw it. So that called second grade potatoes, it can go to different retailers. Some of the potatoes, ugly potatoes also goes into the processed potatoes area where people can make chips. It can goes to animal and cattle field. But remember, animal and cattle feeding, only those potatoes goes which are not at consumer end. Because somehow, if the meat product gets mixed with that, so contamination can lead to various kind of disease in the animal. And diseased potato, because they are potato which also get this diseases as well. Again, it can go to the peeling market. And landfill is one of the most expensive things to do in food waste for everyone. Consumer waste is very difficult to tackle, but we have seen some example in some district of Seoul where you have managed this particular waste very well. Categorization of food waste is also very difficult because we don't know which category. So this type of potato will have this type of waste. If we know that relationship, then we can know that which type of potato we should eat. And we can minimize our waste, which doesn't exist right now. And we also know that if there is a lack of potato growth, potato production or yield, then we can actually accept the less standard of potatoes. Sorry, this diagram doesn't come. So what we have found out in our study that there are various factors at various level of land selection to delivery of factory. There are various factors which affects potato yield and also generates potato waste. And we have found out there are 4 areas that we can actually, if we try to attempt this one, we can do the 50% reduction in potato waste reduction we can do. So these are the area which is seed quality, water, soil, and supply chain corporations. So some of these areas that we are doing interventions in UK, looking at how we can go towards it. And in intervention projects, there are various organizations at the bottom that you see are involved with us. And what we can do, once we know these factors, we can create a system model, and we can actually calculate how much waste it can generate and where this waste exists. But that's a consumer level. If you look at process level, very quickly, if you go to any processing factory, they will say, you ask them, do you have a waste? They will say, no, there is no waste. So this particular factory in Turkey we went, you can see myself in the factory clothes, and we asked them, do you have a food waste? And they said no. And we were quite surprised that they don't have any particular food waste, and also very impressed. When we actually took the tour of the factory, what we found out, the factory is not running. Of course, if factory is not running, there is no waste. But what we have seen in that particular factory, if you see, there are lots of boxes there in that particular factory scattered around. And there is a word called bloqué, if you see on the tag, that means rejected, right? And then various other factory we have gone. This is the cabbage processing factory, and you can see lots of wastage within the factory, different processes. Similarly, there are boxes that people do accidents in their factory, and it's gone thrown into the floor, and because of contamination, it can't be accepted as a finished product, so it has again thrown out. So in these factories, when we did the analysis, what we are finding, so there are 20 factories that we have looked at. They have a wastage from 20 to 26%. Just by, like their production processes are inefficient, they work in different way. We confronted the owners of the factory and said like, no, you have 20 to 26% of the wastage. They said, yes, that's right, but that's called natural waste. We don't call it waste, right? Actually, the problem is we even don't recognize that we are doing something bad. And if we don't recognize that we are something bad, we won't take any action to correct it. So that's one of the problem that we see in waste management. Why it happens? Because you have product expiry, spillage in production processes, bad handling, and various factors that you can go through. And simple engineering solution can solve those problems, but that we are not doing it. So what we have looked at, factory level, we have gone to the farm, we have looked at the factory, and we actually we can actually determine lots of other factors which goes towards the consumer end, and it becomes a very complicated model, but still very viable to do it, and we are working towards collecting the data on these areas. So final thoughts very quickly. The first step of waste management, or even upscaling or recycling, we need to recognize what's the problem is. Identify where these things happens, where the waste happen. What is the total number of waste? Still we talk about kimchi is one of the key highest wasted product, but we are still talking at the consumer end. If we take end-to-end supply chain, there might be a different product. It might not be kimchi. We really don't know what we actually want to, what we are doing it. Also, when we are doing upcycling, means like we are trying to minimize our waste, we need to keep in mind in the future we'll have less waste. And if we are creating upcycling system based on certain waste capacity, that in the future there will be this 20 tons of waste, for example, what if in the future that becomes 5 tons? So the upcycling system in future might not be viable. So we need to keep in account what is the right amount of upcycling system we should be developing. The third point I always say is if we know what is the waste and we understand this is wrong, we'll solve our problems. So informed customer, informed farmers are really, really important. Traceability, again, coming back to the same areas, all these 3 points that I have told you is about supply chain visibility and transparency. If we can create it through digital technologies, it will be very helpful for everyone, including governance, regulators, companies, consumer, which product we should use, which product we should not use, why we should not use that particular company's product, because they're wasting more in their factory, right? If we know those information, we'll do quite good. So what is the whole message here? Message here that we know very little about our food waste. Our first step is we have to work together to find out where these food wastes are, calculate them, find the interventions, and develop upcycling and recycling system based on the balanced approach. So thank you very much.